Sometimes people want to know, can I get away with being in the Army or maybe even in the military without having a driver's license or without owning a car? And there is some possibilities, and that's what I'm going to cover in this video, and that video starts right now. There are some situations that are going to require you to have a driver's license and probably even maybe a car in some situations too, but nonetheless, there are some alternatives to that. Some examples of probably a situation where you're going to need to have a driver's license is probably going to be like an MP. If you want to be an MP in the Army, probably need to have a driver's license, but not all MOSs in the Army or maybe in the military require you to have a driver's license. There's also some other situations that being in the Army, being in the military is going to require you to have a vehicle, especially like if you have a family type of thing, but mainly I want to focus to individuals that may be single soldiers. Single soldiers living in the barracks, and maybe even some individuals that are married but living on post. There are some alternatives to, let's say, having a car. Some installations have like free shuttles, you could catch a ride from somebody. There's a lot of different ways you can do things. You could ride a bike, you can ride a skateboard, you can roller skate, rollerblade if that's still a thing type of thing. But there's a lot of different ways you can probably get around post. That is going to probably depend on the weather as well, so there is a little bit of limitations. Now specifically I want to focus on is sometimes people want to know, could I just simply get away with having a bike? I want to have a bike, I want to go from the barracks to the PX, the barracks to work, whatever kind of a thing. Would that work in the Army? And I would say yes, for the most part. There are some things you got to kind of know along with that, and while we do that, let's go for a bike ride. I got a bike sent to me by a company called Run Deer who makes some electric bikes, and they sent me one. I put that bike together, which wasn't too hard to put together, but I got it assembled and everything like that, tried it out for a little bit, and let's take it out for a little joyride while I talk to you about maybe some of the things you need to know if that's your situation and you want to just simply not have a car and be in the Army and maybe get around post with a bike. In this case, an electric bike. So let's go for a little ride, shall we? Let's go. So I got the opportunity to take this out and take it for a nice little cruise through a great little trail and everything to really experience this bike. And while you enjoy some of that footage and everything, let me tell you about, just having a bike in the Army rather than having to go all out to get a driver's license or spend money on a car. Now, the bike can actually fold in half. There's a little latch right over here. If you unlatch it, unlatches the bike, and then you can swivel this around and it folds in half for easier storage. Maybe you got to put it in the barracks, whatever the case is. The handlebars can come off too. Put it in a trunk of a vehicle, whatever, a little bit more compact. The total weight of the bike is about 66 pounds, but it can fold up a little bit smaller. That way if you need to store it. If you want to put it in the barracks, then you could. If you want to lock it up outside the barracks, then this could be also an option too, but it can fold up and then it just kind of swivels back around and then locks back in place to go back to its full size. Now in the Army, you're not always going to have it where your work is in a convenient location to the barracks. So if you're a single soldier, you're living on post, you're in the barracks, you might have the chance where your office that you're gonna be working out of, the motor pool you're working out of, is a great little short walking distance, but there are also a lot of cases where it's not and it's a little bit farther away. When you run into those situations, that's when it ends up being a thing where you're gonna need to either have a car or catch a ride from somebody else to be able to get to where you need to go to be able to, go to the motor pool or work in the office. So having a bike can have its advantages, right? If you don't want to go spend the money on buying a car, you don't currently have a car, whatever the case is, buying a brand new car, that's going to be, 20, 30, 40, whatever $1,000, depending on what type of vehicle you're trying to get. If you're trying to go on the cheaper side and try to get something used or from a family member, $15,000, maybe more, maybe you get something pretty cheap for $10,000, but nonetheless, you still have to spend quite a good little chunk of money. This bike currently runs for roughly around $1,000. Sometimes the price fluctuates a little bit here and there, but there is a promo code that I'll have down in the description box down below. So if you use the promo code Christopher Chaos, you can get 10% off of this bike. So that helps a little bit to make it a little bit cheaper, but nonetheless, let's say $1,000. That's still cheaper than probably buying a used car. Even, I feel like if you bought a used car for $1,000, that's probably gonna be pretty rough. Now, this won't probably get you through in certain climates, right? If you're stationed at Fort Drum, you're stationed at certain places, then maybe great in the summertime. Outside of that, you might have to come up with some kind of alternatives, but this could be a great alternative maybe for the summertime. And then other locations, let's say for specifically like maybe Fort Hood, maybe Fort Irwin, other locations that don't probably get like a ton of snow, the cold weather isn't even too bad, you probably can still get away with even riding this in the cold weather as well during the winter time. So depending on where you get stationed at, nonetheless, even if you want to kind of, maybe fluctuate between, hey, I don't want to always use my car, I want to ride my bike during the summertime, and then during the wintertime, drive the car, whatever the case is, or you don't have a driver's license, you don't have a car, then maybe use this during when the weather's nice and everything, and all the other times you catch a ride from some of your buddies. A key thing you're also going to have to take note of is that different installations have different policies. For the most part, probably every installation is going to require you to wear a helmet. So you're going to have to wear a helmet if you're riding a bike on post. Some other installations may also require you to also have to wear a reflective vest, maybe a PT belt, or a reflective vest itself that actually is a full on vest type of thing. So you have to check with local policies to see what is required. I'm pretty sure it's going to be every installation requires the helmet. Other installations may or may not require the reflective vest, but at the least, expect that you're gonna have to wear a helmet while riding the bike on base. Now, for this particular bike, with it being electric, it has different modes. So you can choose to simply pedal it and get a workout in and exercise and pedal. That's in mode 0. There's a little mode on this little selector switch over here on the left-hand side of the handlebars. When you press it down or up or whatever the case is to change through the modes. If you're on 0, then that's just simply no electric motor, you're only pedaling. So if the battery was to die, you could still use it as a regular bike as well. So you're not just out of a means of transportation if the battery's dead. If the battery's dead, you just use it as a regular mountain bike. If you're in that case, there's also 7 speeds on the right-hand side where it's got a little dial to be able to switch through those different 7 speeds. So if you're in mode 0 or the bike is turned off, you can still cycle through those different modes to kind of help you on like uphills, downhills, whatever the case is to, cycle through the different 7 speeds. When you have it through 1 through 5, it really doesn't matter what this mode is in because the pedaling kind of friction is basically the exact same as if you have it in like an easiest gear to probably pedal in. It's super easy to pedal when it's in electric mode because when you have it in, let's say 1, and you start pedaling, it's just gonna bring up the speed to that max speed of whatever the speed setting is for level 1. That's probably roughly around close to 10 miles per hour type of thing. This bike does have a max speed of roughly about 28 miles per hour, but when you're in one of those modes 1 through 5 and you start pedaling, it just automatically engages that electric motor to allow you to kind of get up to that speed based on the mode you're in. If you don't want to pedal at all, you can use the accelerator. There's an accelerator on the right-hand side, and if you have it in mode 1 through 5, whatever mode it is, then that's going to bring you up to a max speed when you crank the throttle all the way up. But you have that throttle available to you, so if you have a rough PT day where you did really heavy on legs, you did a lot of running or whatever, and you don't want to pedal at all, well, then you can just use the throttle. Some electric bikes out there will require you to pedal to be able to actually use the electric motor. This one does not. So that one has a good little advantage there where there's no requirement. You don't have to pedal if you don't want to. You can if you wish to do so, but you don't have to. Of course, if the battery's dead, then you have no choice, but that's good because if the battery's dead, it's just now a normal mountain bike. The brakes on this bike are disc brakes, so they're not going to be your normal brakes like you see on a mountain bike where it just has these small little pads that, add friction to the rim. These ones actually have some hydraulic brakes that are going to clamp down onto that disc that is on both the front and rear wheels to help you slow down in that kind of fashion. So I'm about 6'2" and it feels pretty comfortable. You can adjust the handlebars, the seat and everything to go higher or lower based on whatever you need. The max height they recommend for this bike is 6'3" with a minimum being 5'3". Also, the max weight is 350 pounds. So it's got a pretty good weight capacity that it can handle. So if you are in that situation where you're 200 something pounds, whatever, you'll probably just be fine as long as you're not over that 350 max pound weight. Now, when riding on post, other things you have to kind of factor into is where you're allowed to ride. So you have to kind of make sure of that too. There might be some areas where they do restrict where you can ride a bike at, some other areas where they say that, hey, you can only ride bikes in these areas. So that's what you have to kind of pay attention to. But this could be an easy way to be able to get from the barracks to where you need to get from the barracks to go to the shopette, throw a backpack on and be able to cruise over to the shopette, grab some snacks or whatever, cruise back to the barracks, and it could be a great means of transportation without needing a car. Now, some kind of scenarios where you probably are going to need a car, right? if you are married with a family, you probably need a car, at least one car, right? Whether it's going to be the one that your family uses to get around town, and then maybe you get a bike and you're maybe in a good enough distance from base that you can ride the bike to work and back, and then your spouse is the one with the vehicle to transport the family and do other things, then that might work out. But if that's all you have is the bike, probably not going to work out too well if you got a family. If you live really far from post, probably not very easy. You're gonna have to leave really early. Weather is gonna probably mess things up in some cases. So probably the best case scenario for a situation where someone could really utilize a bike and they don't have a car or they don't have a driver's license, single soldiers live in the barracks, or maybe you have a soldier that is married, but they live on post and the spouse uses the car while you utilize a bike to get to and from work, because it's a short distance, it's easy to do, great during the summertime, and the spouse can use the vehicle. So you kind of have to weigh, whether or not you fall into one of those categories to be able to rely solely on a bike, or if you are still going to need a vehicle for other kind of scenarios. So I would say, if you're a single soldier, you live in certain kind of areas, you might be able to get away with just only having a bike, right? But other locations are going to probably require you to have maybe a backup. Maybe that's backup is not necessarily a car, but maybe a buddy that does have a vehicle and they're cool with giving you a ride over to work or over to the shop at or whatever the case is. I like this bike. It's fun. I had a blast riding it around today. I would love to have something like this when I was a single soldier living in the barracks, to be able to just cruise around base, to be able to go over to shop at, to be able to do whatever, just have fun and cruise around. Maybe if I had a couple of buddies that also had one type of thing and go for a little cruise around post, I think this would be a great alternative to owning a car, or maybe just not using the car as often and using the bike, when the weather is pretty nice outside. So what do you guys think? I'd like to hear you guys' comments down in the comment section down below. Would this be a great bike for you, for your kind of scenario? Maybe the scenario of you live in a great climate kind of area, use this during the summertime and get around post, with ease on a bike. For my veteran viewers out there, I'd like to hear from you guys as far as how did you get around post, right? Did you have a car? Did you have a bike? Did you hitch a ride from some other people? There are now a lot of installations that do have shuttles that get you around, but nonetheless, there's a lot of different ways you can get around post. This being one way of, not needing to rely on a vehicle, having a bike, skateboard, whatever the case is. I want to know how you got around post. Let me know. For me, I had a car. There were some times in Korea I had rollerblades and I kind of get around a little bit on rollerblades, but a bike was great. I did have a bike in Korea. In fact, I got this scar on my elbow was I wrecked on my bike in Korea. But e-bikes were not a thing just yet at that point in time. I don't think they were. This would have been amazing to be able to get around post even in Korea, in the statesides. This would have been a great way to be able to get around. So if you are interested in this alternative to buying a car, to getting a driver's license, and you'd rather just cruise around on an e-bike, check out the link I've got in the description box down below. Make sure you utilize that promo code ChristopherChaos, so that way you can save a little bit, get 10% off, and be able to cruise around on a sweet e-bike. Now, if you want to learn a little bit more about some other topics that I talk about on my channel, well, check out any of these videos that I've got right here. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching. I'm Christopher Chaos, and I'll see you next time. See ya.